Bucky O'Hare, the arcade game. Man, oh man, do I have some memories of this one. I remember my local independently owned video store across the street from me having this classic as hell arcade game, and I would play this bad boy every Friday night until sadly it was removed. The crazy thing is there were two rather big arcades in Queens, New York that had a ton of other really amazing and classic arcade games, but they did not have Bucky O'Hare. So this was gone forever, lost to time, and soon Bucky O'Hare as a franchise would be too. So what is Bucky O'Hare? And according to the poll I put out on my community tab, I definitely need to inform the masses. Well, the story of what this rather obscure franchise is definitely odd, and after doing some research, I didn't even realize just how odd it was, and the fact that the series actually got an arcade game is a bit puzzling, but I'm so glad it did. So the story sees Captain Bucky O'Hare, an anthropomorphic green rabbit, and his crew, who make up part of the United Animal Federation, battling against the evil Toad Empire for the fate of the galaxy. So it's an action-adventure sci-fi series with obvious inspiration from Star Wars and Star Trek. So the franchise started off as a comic book series with a mere 6 issues that were published in 1984 and 1985, and then suddenly there was an animated series, Bucky O'Hare and the Toad War, 6 years later in 1991. And there was a toy line as well, and I actually had Bucky, Deadeye, Duck, and Blinky, and even bought an issue of the comic as a kid. The UK actually had their own exclusive comic book series, which consisted of 20 issues, but the first 6 were reprints of the original comic. It's crazy to think that Bucky O'Hare started as a comic book series, and the UK actually had the most issues, despite Bucky O'Hare being created in the US. The show was sadly cancelled after only 13 episodes, and it's really a ton of fun. You should really give it a watch. So, the swan song for the franchise came in the form of 2 video games. First, the NES game, and then the arcade game, both developed by Konami. Both are very different games, the NES title being a Mega Man inspired platformer, while the arcade game is a beat 'em up. So we're here to talk about the arcade game for now, and this is a good looking game for sure. The character sprites are big and detailed, and there's explosions, lasers, and always a lot of razzle dazzle to delight the eye. The presentation is simply fantastic with actual voiced over cutscenes, with the characters actually moving their mouths, plus all the voice actors from the animated series are back to voice their respective characters. Talk about adding flavor to a game, and especially for this time, this is really fucking good. It's engaging, it makes it feel like a truly special game, and trust me, it is. You can choose from Bucky, Deadeye, Duck, Blinky, and Jenny. And well, the game is pretty basic, but it's definitely fun. You can shoot, jump, and use screen clearing bombs and use special upgraded weapons, and if you're close enough to an enemy, you'll give him a good old knuckle sandwich. If you press both the attack and jump buttons together, you'll use your quote-unquote gimmick weapon, and until looking it up on Game FAQs, I didn't even know there's actually a jump kick. But for some reason, you need to jump and then press both the attack and jump buttons together. Why not just press the jump button and then the attack button, like they do in most beat 'em ups? This is a little awkward for such a basic fundamental attack, to be honest. And the combat does not feel anywhere as satisfying as Turtles in Time, I'll be honest. It just doesn't feel as smooth. That's probably due to the main attack you have being your laser guns. However, that's really a matter of taste. You don't have many variations of attack unless you opt for the gimmick weapons and the jump kick, which isn't always very practical in most situations. It's really just quicker to shoot. Just keep moving and shoot is the best strategy. And if you're overwhelmed, use a bomb. Overall, I didn't find myself bored with the combat coming back to this game, and it truly is fun because of how fast-paced the action is. There's also the odd little move where you can slow the descent of a character after jumping. How are the characters doing this exactly? Do they have on anti-gravity boots or something? It does look pretty cool with Bucky's cape, but kinda odd with everyone else. So you'll traverse through the stages, and there's a lot of fun and variety to be had. You'll be using a jetpack, performing a prison break, flying through a spaceship at top speed on a hijacked enemy hovercraft known as a toad croaker. It's a lot of fun, and there's no shortage of enemies, and the bosses are massive and intimidating. You'll face off against Alligator, your arch nemesis, the Air Marshal, and eventually the leader of the entire Toad Empire complex, to name a few. The Air Marshal is basically the Shredder of Bucky O'Hare, I'd say, and you can think of Complex like Krang being his superior. This is a truly action-packed game, and they throw so much shit at you. It makes Turtles in Time, X-Men, and The Simpsons look like a cakewalk. This is more on par with the Battletoads arcade game, as it's a game that really demands many of your credits, and back in the day, this would be your hard-earned money, or back in my day, specifically, my parents' hard-earned money. I mean, this game really makes you feel like you're fighting an entire military force. The Toad Empire uses everything at their disposal to stop you. I mean, holy shit, the final boss complex is a ridiculously hard boss where most of the difficulty comes from the fact at how many hits it takes to bring this fucker down. He has multiple phases and he seemingly never goes down. This was simply just cheap design to make the game a quarter muncher, but it definitely feels like this is the final boss, that's for sure. Now let's talk about the OST for a moment. So this is a pretty epic sounding soundtrack, to say the least. It definitely is John Williams influenced. And who is the composer? Well, none other than Norio Hanzawa, who, strangely enough, and I guess it's really not that strange, is the composer for the Simpsons arcade game, also Gunstar Heroes and Dynamite Headdy. So this guy has been around the block, to say the least, when it comes to OSTs. He made it sound very symphonic in style, and it obviously draws inspiration from Star Wars at times, and sometimes it goes off in its own direction. It's pretty chaotic sounding, and I really like it. It has that very sci-fi feel, but I definitely prefer the NES soundtrack, which was not done by Hanzawa. But we'll talk about that in another video. So yeah, this game is pretty great. I truly think this game deserves to be one of the greats, and it's definitely one of my favorites. Now, of course, the game looked like a small fish in a very large pond when compared to the absolute cavalcade of classic beat-em-ups in the arcades at the time. I mean, the Bucky O'Hare franchise was nowhere near the level of popularity of The Simpsons, the Ninja Turtles, or the X-Men, not to mention all the other amazing arcade games that weren't even beat-em-ups that were staples of any arcade at the time. I mean, Bucky O'Hare was a highly niche franchise that probably many people hadn't heard of. Were you going to pop your quarters or tokens inside a game that was based on a cartoon that only had 13 episodes that probably very few people actually saw at all? Or one that was based on a cartoon that was already in its 4th season in The Simpsons? Yeah, I think you get my point. I've always loved the obscure and was naturally drawn to stuff like Earthworm Jim, Street Sharks, and of course the Ninja Turtles. Something about the struggling nature of the Bucky O'Hare franchise is so appealing to me. As a kid, I didn't even realize it was struggling. I thought it was just another popular series because it had its own arcade game, action figures, and a show. Little did I know that it was one of many franchises that failed in the 90s due to an oversaturated market, as everyone and their mama was trying to anxiously scramble to replicate the success of the Ninja Turtles. And Bucky O'Hare, although very different, I'm sure was part of those attempts. I mean, a comic book series about anthropomorphic animals with an animated series adaptation with its own action figure line in video games? Yeah, I'd say this one got further than most. I mean, not even Street Sharks got a game. We haven't heard from Bucky O'Hare in a long time, and there doesn't seem to be any true demand to have him back, sadly. It seems that this is a franchise lost to time, with very little interest online from what I've seen. I'd like to give a shout out to Top Hat Gaming Man for doing a video on the arcade game as well. It was nice to see at least one prominent YouTuber giving the spotlight to it. James and Mike Mondays also did a video on the NES game, and even James was not familiar with any Bucky O'Hare content, although he claimed to have heard of it. So, there is some Bucky O'Hare content out there on YouTube. You can find things. You can even watch the cartoon series on YouTube, which I would greatly recommend that you do. It's only 13 episodes. So, guys, let me know what you think. Have you ever watched Bucky O'Hare before? Have you ever read the comics or played the games or played with the action figures? I would really love to know in the comments down below. And let me know if this is the first time that you've ever seen anything Bucky O'Hare. This is the first time you're looking at this. You're like, oh, whoa, what's this? What's the Green Rabbit? I've never seen this before in my life. What's going on here? You know, let me know. I would like to know what your opinions are. That would be really great. Anyway, guys, thank you all for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell to get all notifications when I post all my new videos. Hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and hit the thumbs down if you fucking hated it. If you guys want to give me a donation on Patreon, I would be very grateful for that. And thanks again, guys, for watching. I'll see you next time.